Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Happy Monday. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Keith Smith. Keith, an exciting time on the calendar here. We're counting down. It is almost playoff time in the NBA, now less than a week away. And we've got a little bit of news that just might matter for the postseason.
Yeah, we've got 7 days left in the regular season, only 6 game days because we are down to no games on the, the Saturday. This coming Saturday. Everybody plays Friday. Everybody's off Saturday. Everybody plays Sunday. Well, see, there's, I imagine in the West, there's going to be seeds up for grabs because that's a complete mess behind the Thunder and kind of the Rockets-ish a little bit. And then there's 5-6 teams all together. And then the play-in tournament pillow fight for the 9, 10, 11 teams. We'll see who even wants it at that point. But I know you're a happy guy today, man. Your team coming off a blowout of the Thunder. Have they missed a 3 yet?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think they have. Luka has yet to look while making a pass. Insane stuff that happened yesterday for the Lakers. But yeah, you look at the standings in the West. It's going to be a close race. It wouldn't be impossible for there to be a huge tie with a bunch of teams finishing with 32 losses or something like that. Then we get into tiebreaker hell and everything. But it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out in the West, because everything is so close and it feels like everything is still up in the air. I will say the one thing when you talk about the pillow fight, I think the Suns have tapped out. I think they're done.
Yeah, we're pretty close. It feels like, at least, right?
2 games back in the loss column of Dallas. Not that Dallas is winning a ton right now, but this is the most critical part of your season, and the Suns have lost 6 in a row. I think the 10 teams that are in the postseason, including the play-in right now, this is the 10 for the West.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I would be surprised if Phoenix even wants it at this point. They've lost 6 in a row. They played Boston over the weekend, completely lifeless, got absolutely rocked, and then they just don't look like they. A lot of the guys that are out there don't look like they care all that much beyond let's get the season over with. Let's pick up no new injuries.
They're like my students the last week of school. All right, everybody, take out your books. And it's why do we're almost done. That's what they look like out there on the basketball court right now.
Except your students are headed on to the next grade, and the Suns are headed absolutely nowhere right now.
Well,
Kevin we're going to talk more about
Durant might be heading on somewhere else. But let's get to that in just a moment. First, concerning news, certainly the Nuggets, Jamal Murray dealing with a hamstring injury. They're hopeful he'll be ready for the playoffs. That's not what you want to hear, is the word hopeful, and that to me suggests his regular season is probably over. And the Nuggets are one of 5 teams right now currently tied with 32 losses. That's a big deal. If they don't have Jamal Murray, the Nuggets have lost now 4 in a row at a terrible time to do so. This is red flags here in Denver for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's not good anyway, but this takes the Nuggets from being a fringe-ish title contender from will they even get out of the first round, right? Like you hit that spot and that just becomes really, really hard. They struggle so much to do anything easy that isn't driven by Nikola Jokic, and they're not getting enough out of Michael Porter Jr.
No.
Russell Westbrook looks like maybe the clock struck midnight on the really nice efficient season he was having. He's been a little rough recently. So we're just in a spot, man. If they don't have Jamal Murray, it's going to be tough.
Well, and on top of that, Keith, that's that they're struggling right now without Jamal Murray, and that's with Aaron Gordon apparently making a deal with a Crossroads Demon to become the best 3-point shooter in the NBA. Right. That's the only explanation I have. I don't know how he goes from being a 29% 3-point shooter to suddenly 45% from deep, but even he's lighting it up. And they've lost, their last 4, and it's a tough time for Denver. They're awful.
Rough.
Awful.
Yeah, the Aaron Gordon, normally we would have been this is a contract. Push, but he already signed the extension. Yeah. So they're just getting, really good play out of him. And that it's so funny. If you look at it, 35% for Aaron Gordon 2 seasons ago, you're like, all right, that's, passable. We feel good about that with him. then 29% last year. And you're like, all right, don't shoot any more 3-pointers. And now this year, 45% on 3.3 attempts per game. Like, that's pretty reasonable. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to trust it beyond this season, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, been impressive. But we'll see what happens with the Nuggets. Obviously, a very tight race in the West, and anything is still possible at this point.
Yep.
We did mention the Phoenix Suns and reporting that they want. Not a surprise, I suppose. They would like to get a lot in exchange for Kevin Durant. If, and I think probably the more appropriate word is when, they trade KD this summer. What kind of a haul can Phoenix actually expect to get, though, for a Kevin Durant that's getting up there in years and only has 1 year remaining on his contracts? That will give him a lot of ability to step in and steer his landing spot. Yeah,
and I thought what was interesting, this came from Brian Windhorst, who's pretty much been all over the Phoenix stuff this season. He basically said that was what they wanted last year at the trade deadline. Durant also made it very well known, like, I don't really want to be traded in season. And he said that kind of combination of they weren't going to get the haul they wanted. He didn't want to be moved. That kind of killed his chances. Mm-hmm. But he said, they are expected to trade him this summer. And then he said, but the haul may not be all that they want it to be because he's going to be 37 next year and reportedly, or, would like something in the range of a 2-year, $120 million extension off his contract. And that gets to be, all right, that's a lot of money, right? And he's been really good. I think the one worry you have with him, I don't really worry about production-wise. Maybe that'll fall off the cliff in the next couple of seasons. I more worry about, is he going to be healthy? How many games you're going to have him for? Because now missed a little bit of time earlier this year. Now he's down again. So that gets to be a little tough. So we'll see. I did like Bobby Marks put out a thing on ESPN, the 28 best offers teams could have made for Luka. If like there was like a bidding war for Luka, like, and he had to be traded. And what I really liked in there was he kind of called out a bunch of teams where it was like you needed, like, the Celtics weren't even mentioned, but like, here's why it wasn't going to be them. Here's why it wasn't going to be them. And he kind of called out with Minnesota, like, it wasn't going to be Minnesota because it was almost impossible to do a trade. And now you're starting to hear more people. Bill Simmons talked about that today, where he's like, the Luka or KD to Minnesota trade, which would have been just as complicated as Luka. Yeah. He's like, how are you going to make that happen? There were no matching contracts and second aprons and all this other stuff. But we're going to talk more CBA apron talk a little later in the show when we bring in a special guest who
that's
we'll bring in a little bit. We get a couple more quick topics to hit.
Right. A couple of quick topics here to get to. I do think with Kevin Durant, with teams looking to trade for him, one of the challenges may be defensively now. That's where his game to me has slipped a bit, to where now you're building your roster around to try to not hide, but at least not magnify KD's weaknesses. And I think that's been one of the issues with the Suns. He's just not the all-world defensive player that he was when he was 28, which is to be expected. He's still a phenomenal player. And I think there will be a strong market for him, but it's going to be interesting to see what that, quote, haul actually winds up looking like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it'll be less than what we think of when it's like, it's Kevin Durant. Like,
sure.
And some of that's just driven by, I don't think teams are motivated all that much to be like, here's 5 first-round picks and, by all these great players and all this stuff. I think we're kind of moving out of that for the time being. It'll come back around because it always does. But 37-year-old guy with health issues that needs a new contract, that's probably not getting you the mega haul you want.
We will still be firing the Kevin Cannon plenty this offseason. Fire that Kevin Cannon. All right, Joe Cronin got an extension with the Portland Trail Blazers. That's it. That's a team, Keith, that is on the rise. I don't know if I'd look at them and say next season they could be this year's Rockets or last year's Thunder, or the team that just makes that leap. The Wolves were a high-rising team a couple seasons ago as well. I don't know if they're quite ready to be that team. We'll see what happens. Maybe they get some lottery luck, but this is a team that certainly has looked like they're on the upswing now. Looks like they're figuring some things out, putting some pieces together. And good to see Joe Cronin get some credit for that.
Yeah, I think this little run here in the second half. Well, what did Shams have? They're 22-16 since January 19th. Mm-hmm. So that's 38 games. Like, we're talking a half season. This isn't not a isn't not a boy. That was really, really good grammar by me.
It's Monday. It's okay, Keith.
It is Monday. We're easing into it. This is not a situation where the Trailblazers have had a good couple of weeks or like a hot month in March when there's a lot of weird stuff with tanking and teams resting guys going on. They've been good for half a season, really, since a couple weeks before the trade deadline. So that probably gets Joe Cronin this extension, maybe saves Chauncey Billups' job. Let's see where they go from here. I think they're gonna we'll get deep into them in the offseason when we get there, but they're really interesting for the summertime because they've got so many tradable veteran guys that I think you could, even if you're not like getting a KD desired haul, you should still get something valuable as you kind of reset your roster. I think their big thing is pick a path. Do you want to build around your kids, or do you want to build and add some veterans to try to put with those kids? Pick your path, move it forward, and let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. They've found some really interesting players. I love what Tumani Kamara has done. They've got some decisions to make with a guy like Anthony Simons, but then you've got the Jeremy Grants of the world, Rob Williams, players like that they're probably looking to move on for. We'll see what happens to DeAndre Ayton as well. That'll be a big question for Portland this summer. But a team that, again, feels like they're starting to put some things together. So the big extension there for them as they want to continue
got a
this.
little wrecked with the injury at the end of the year, but Scoot Henderson had a kind of nice stabilizing step forward season. You're not still like jumping up and down and going crazy, but I think you feel better about where it was. It's worth noting the Spurs and Blazers were both eliminated from playoff contention yesterday. They actually played each other, so one of them was going to be out, but then the Kings won, and that took both of them out. So we're down to it. We've got one spot left up for grabs, and that's as we talked about. Who knows if the Suns even want it to make it a contest over the last few days.
All right, let's go here. Marcus Bagley gets a Keith. I love that you put 10-day in quotes. Is that just because there's not even 10 days left in the NBA season?
Yeah, so this is just a fun little quirky thing, a little educational moment here. So under normal times, players, when there's fewer than 10 days left in the season, you can't sign a 10-day contract, right? It's one of those things that actually is like, all right, that's just common sense logic, right? Where it becomes weird, like unlike the things where it's called the taxpayer mid-level exception, even though you can be a taxpayer and have that available, like it just seems weird. Like it's always been an odd thing, like the way that's gone. But anyway, Marcus Bagley, why was he allowed to sign a 10-day contract? Because it was via the hardship exception. So what happened, and I checked with a couple people to confirm that my logic was right on this, when they put in all the COVID-related rules around 10-day contracts and those call-ups teams could do and the hardship type things, when they did the new CBA, they kind of codified a lot of that to say, let's just make it a thing that if it's a hardship, even if there's 7-8 days left in the season, you could still sign a guy to a 10-day contract, but it's going to cover the remainder of the season. Now, why this is a little bit different than like a rest of season contract, the Philadelphia 76ers, when the season ends on Sunday, Bagley's contract expires. He comes completely off. They have no free agent rights for him or anything like that. Whereas if your guy, Cole Swider, signed a rest of season contract with Toronto, they at least have his non-bird rights going into the summertime where they would have that. Philly will have no rights for Marcus Bagley unless there's always the chance here in the next few days. Maybe they waive somebody and move him over to a standard deal, but it doesn't really look like that's going to happen.
All right. Let's do a quick bracket challenge update here before we bring on our guest.
Yeah. All right. So quick bracket challenge, and appreciate both of these people at least have some name in there. We'll see if that's their real name, but we'll figure this out. Trevor, we're down to Houston in Florida. Houston won after Duke collapsed, and Florida won a wild game with Auburn. It was two really fun Final Four games. And now we're down to Houston and Florida. So we've got Harrison Montague currently leading the bracket challenge, has Houston. And then I think it's Tate Renzenbrink is how you would say this. It looks like it says Tater Enzenbrink, which I hope it is Tater. That would be really fun.
That would be great.
But he has Florida. So whoever wins, one of those two is going to win. And then you get the prize of either we're going to bring you on the show and you can talk really whatever NBA topics you want with us, or I guess if they want to get into Marvel and stuff, we'll do that too.
Sure.
Share prize. We just got to keep it appropriate. Or you can submit priority questions that we'll answer for you on a Friday live show or another show or something like that. So after tonight, we'll reach out. We'll let the winner know how we want to get in touch. We'll work on scheduling to get it all set up for them to come on. But we're down to two teams and two people alive in the bracket challenge, which is a lot of fun.
The Montagues and the Taters going head to head. Shakespearean tragedy story. There. The classic story.
Just
all
like
right.
the bard intended.
All right. Let's get it. Our audience is like, what are you guys talking about? Let's get a little bit into the CBA here. We're going to bring on our guest. You guys know him. He does a phenomenal job with all things CBA and cap related. And that is the great Eric Pincus. Eric, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you, man. We're excited. I know we're gonna talk some CBA stuff. Not Eric. No curveballs here. We're not asking you to go deep into the collective bargaining agreement. It's more high level. With at some point, what's the statute of limitations on calling this the new CBA? Like we've got to probably collect.
That's right.
That's a good question. It's kind of like New Year's, right? Like if I came on the show and said Happy New Year, it's April, then it doesn't make sense. So
yeah,
I mean it's still fresh. We'll call it 3 years. Let's call it 3 years. By the
perfect.
third year,
all right, that's good. So
I'll stop calling it the new CBA right when we get the next CBA. Kind of like what it is New Year, where I've been writing 2024 over and over again. I'll finally adjust to 2025 right when we're about to change to 2026.
2026. So we're going to do a couple CBA questions with Eric here, just high level stuff, and then we're going to wrap the show. We're going to talk about Sports Business Classroom, which you can see behind Eric on his background. He's heavily involved with here. So we're going to talk about what it is, when is it, how do you get more information, how do you sign up, all that stuff to reach out. So the really cool thing, Eric, I don't even know if you know this, Trevor, it's probably at least one or two questions almost every Friday live show. Like, hey, if I want to learn more about the CBA, or if I want to work for a team someday, what are ways to get? Every Friday we do a live show EP, and every week we get questions like that, and we're continually saying you need to check out Sports Business Classroom. It's the best way. So if you're one of the listeners who's asked that question, this is the guy who's going to give it to you. But we're going to make him work a little bit first before we get there. So Eric, I'll start with this. Trevor and I talk a lot about, with the new CBA, unintended consequences, things that maybe they didn't foresee as they put together the new CBA language. Do you have like one or two things that have come up for you early on where you're like, I feel like that wasn't the way they intended for this to work out, and that's what we're seeing through the first couple of transaction cycles?
Well, I would say there's a pending one that we don't really know yet. So I don't know if it's realized yet, because I think what we just saw at the trade deadline could be the start of the use of the mid-level exception, biennial exception, as a trade exception. It was a new rule. So in the past, let's say you want to acquire a player and you have $12 million mid-level exception. You can't use that in the past, prior CBA. You could spend it on a player, free agent. Technically, you can claim a player off waivers, but realistically, you can't use it in a trade. And now they're functionally trade exceptions, and it's not for the apron teams. Apron teams are the higher spending teams. So the higher spending teams can't take advantage of this, but we started to see at the deadline teams use that mid-level to make trades. And really what you're doing, because they expire, right? So you can use your mid-level exception for the next week if you're a team. Can't use it in April, May, June, once the season's over. But it's like a trade exception lasts a year. So if you use that mid-level, you will have that trade exception for a full year. So it's a strategic tool. So that's all well and good. That was an intended consequence. That was something they planned. But the concerns I have, and I've voiced this to people with the NBA and the NBPA, is that teams used to peel off some of their mid-level to sign second-round picks. And then they added in this new CBA, which we can still call it that for another year, they added the second-round pick exception. And I was like, okay, great. You just reestablished the mid-level, so teams don't have to peel off some of it. But now that it's seen what it can do at the deadline as a trade exception, do we see that teams just don't spend it at all? And to be honest, historically, teams don't always spend their full mid-level. It's kind of rare for a team to really go all in on the mid-level anyway. And so when you're on the player side, if you're going into free agency, really, of course, you have your stars. They're going to get the max. Maybe they're a high-level starter. They're going to get in the 20s to 30s. But everybody else is fighting to get either above the mid-level or as close to the mid-level as possible. So you have like an Okongwu who got a relatively rich contract, under 20, but relative to the mid-level. Someone like Peyton Pritchard got the opposite. He got a good deal for him, but it's a discount relative to the mid-level. Now the question is if you don't have that mid-level and you're negotiating as an agent and you're trying to get your team up to that, let's say it's $14 million this next year. What is your negotiating leverage if you don't have that $14 million? So I presented that as a potential unintended consequence, and the answer I got from the powers that be is that they really expect in this new deal for there to be more trades. They've loosened the trade rules, despite what you hear from maybe talking heads who say that the new CBA kills all trades, which before the season, I'm like, what are you talking about? It makes it easier to make trades. Unless you're in these aprons, which, yes, admittedly is harder. And we had more trades than we've ever had in the history of the NBA this year. So I feel like, I've won that argument like kind of in a landslide, like a beatdown. And then the other is extensions. The intention is that when we get to July, we may not have this big free agent bonanza because everyone of any note, for the most part, has already extended. So Brandon Ingram, what do we call it? Like pre-agency? You have the Raptors acquiring him at the deadline and extending him. This is the guy they would have targeted in free agency if they had money. They didn't have money, so let's do it now. And that's sort of the intent. So I would say that's probably an intended consequence, but the unintended is I wonder what happens to these players because this summer there's only, 2 teams that have money? The Nets have a gazillion dollars to spend.
Yeah.
The Pistons maybe have 25, a little bit less, depends on a couple of factors. Let's call it 25, a little bit under. And then some teams can get to that, some level of money. Does LeBron leave the Lakers? Like there are options.
Sure.
But realistically, it's probably the Grizzlies might go under the cap just to pay Jaren Jackson Jr. So I'm not even counting them. So no one has money. So once the Nets are, if you're not going to the Nets, you're needing that $14 million. And if teams are like, yeah, no, we're not spending it, then what is your leverage to get that kind of money from your team? So that's the one that I've got my eye on moving forward.
Right. Is that going to be, do you foresee that being just like kind of a continued squeezing of the middle class in the NBA and maybe unintentionally because of that situation? I mean, I think back to like Tyus Jones, who wound up, now part of that was situationally. He wanted to go to a place where he could be a starter, thought he would be making a good career move by taking the minimum with Phoenix. But could you see more situations like that where guys are kind of looking around and going, man, none of the options are great. Nobody's giving me the full MLE. I guess I'm going to go take a 1-year deal on the minimum and see if I can cash in again next summer. Are we looking ahead to kind of more of that type of situation?
Well, I mean, you're hitting all the trigger words for me. It's amazing. Like you've hit on every single one. Like Tyus Jones. So just to give a sense of Tyus Jones, when I first started watching the NBA more as what is going on, as opposed to just being a fan watching the game. When I started to feel that, how does the system work? The Chicago Bulls win the championship with Michael. Michael retires, kind of whatever, semi-retires. Scotty moves on, and Dennis Rodman, who at the time just won a championship, was an animal as far as like non-scoring threat, but one of the most important players in the NBA at the time, as far as defense and rebound. Basically, a better Draymond Green in terms of defense and rebounding. Although Warriors fans might not like that. Sorry, equal Draymond Green. If
it's okay, they're in school right now anyway.
Okay. So. But Dennis was like, I'm going to take my time and see where I want to go. And what happened was like teams ran out of money. They had similar rules, different rules, but teams that had mid-levels and whatnot spent their money. Teams that had cap room spent their money, and there was no money for Dennis Rodman, so he had to take a minimum deal with the Lakers. Then he forgot to bring his shoes to practice one day, and Kurt Rambis kicked him off the team. So he was the coach at the time. So the point is with Tyus Jones is that like teams run out of money. They've been running out of money since I've been doing this, and that predates me even doing this journalistically or professionally, to the point where it's like the late 90s. So we're talking a long time ago. So it's not a new issue what happened with Tyus Jones. I would argue where the mistake made with Tyus Jones is that when he took a contract with Memphis, he took a 2-year deal. And if they're willing to give you a 2-year deal, as an agent, I would recommend get a 3rd year with team control, team option or non-guaranteed. I would argue get like $1 million guaranteed, because it kind of makes you a little bit more likely to be traded in a salary matching thing. Because in a 3-year deal, you can be extended. And Washington could have looked at a situation trying to trade him. A team very well might have traded for Tyus Jones if they could also extend him. But since they couldn't, and he's a small point guard, he's borderline starter, he just fell into a tough situation where the team didn't value his rights, the Wizards. He had been offered more that he had turned down in some other situations, and it just didn't work out for him. So I don't think that Tyus Jones is emblematic of modern CBA issues. I think he's somebody who is absolutely representative of why you have to get your guy traded before the deadline to a team that values your rights, because if you end up in a team that doesn't, you could be the one who is squeezed out. Dennis Schroeder wasn't a victim of this new CBA. He ended up in the same boat where he just wasn't valued, and he ended up in a bad situation, desperate for a team, joined the Celtics, right? And got lucky to get more than the minimum. I think he got like their taxpayer mid-level.
Yeah, you got the taxpayer, yep.
Right. So, but he couldn't even get like a trade bonus or anything like extra. Like they gave him a very team-friendly deal, and it was really probably a deal just like, we'll sign this guy because he's good enough that we could probably trade him. And didn't they trade him at the deadline, or I forget?
Yeah, they more or less salary dumped him that year.
Yeah, so it didn't even work out for the Celtics. It was just like, yeah, but the point, and look, Dennis is fine. He got other deals. He's doing fine. But the squeezing is more of a reflection of making good decisions, a little bit of luck, because no matter what, you make the best decision you can as a team or as an agent / player. You make the best decision you can, and not every decision in the moment is going to be the right decision. So whether Tyus made a wrong decision, bad decision, or Dennis or whatever, things happen. I'm not blaming them. I'm not blaming Dennis Rodman, but I don't want to say that that's a new CBA issue. But the other one is the squeezing of the middle class. And again, with age, I'm not like 20. I've been doing this for about 20 years. I came in with LeBron. We both have, I mean, he's doing better on the hairline than I am, but we're both fighting it. You know what I'm saying? With age comes a certain amount of perspective, so that I've just seen, like I got to see Michael play in person and Kareem and Magic, so I can give at least a firsthand point of view of how good is a Luka, a Jokic, these kind of things. But one of the other aspect is that I've been hearing that the middle class is getting squeezed for as long as I've been around. And what's worked, and what people thought Derek Fisher did in 2011 when they changed the split of BRI, basically, it was at the time, very bad deal for the players. At least that's how it perceived. But what it did lead was to a much healthier NBA. And by having a healthier NBA, the minimum salary now is over $1 million. So the middle class, it's more that the quote lower class, and I don't think that's the right word, but minimum players,
sure,
they're at a point where they're earning more than what used to be the minimum class. So I feel like if anything, we're eliminating the bottom class, because if you're a vet, like you're Russell Westbrook, he's not getting paid a ton to be in Denver. He's still getting over $3 million, which back then that would have been almost the mid-level. Like mid-level, you go back to 15 years, and mid-level might have been 4 or 5 or something like that, right? So it's not that and I'm not going to paint a picture that everything is perfect, but teams are forced into difficult decisions. But what's happening for the quote middle class is that they're getting extended, and they're getting extended at the average player salary. And the average player salary at 12, 14, whatever, is what the max used to be 10, 15 years ago. So I don't think that the middle class is being squeezed. I think that there are issues because there's no perfect system. The biggest issue and the biggest goal isn't really talked about, in my opinion, by mainstream media or by really most people, especially people. Keith, at least you approach things because you have an understanding of what is actually the intent and the rules, and you study things. You put in the work. There are people who may have bigger names than you and I in the media space who don't put in the work and have vast opinions about things that they don't know anything about, and it's frustrating.
Name names, Eric. Name names.
People take it as like gospel and like this is true, and it's just not educated opinion. And like I'm happy to go on those shows and argue with them and explain and whatever. But like to me, and I don't even know if the PA and the NBA agree fully, but to me, the most important aspect of what we're trying to accomplish here is what we call the BRI split. So if the league takes in 10 billion, the players get 5 billion, and that's like every year. Whatever it's not 50-50, but we'll call it 50-50. It's in that range. And so how do you make that magically happen with 4 or 5 year Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown signed 6-year deal, 5-year extensions on so 6 years of contract. You have renegotiations like Lowry Markkanen and in recent years Miles Turner and Sabonis, et cetera. And then you have buyouts and you have trade bonuses like DeJounte Murray is earning more than he was, quote, supposed to because he got a trade bonus. So how does all these transactions, and, Keith, this, keeping track of transactions during the year is a tremendous amount of work. How does that suddenly magically at the end of the year equal half? The answer is that it doesn't. And so the players only get 90% of their money throughout the year. And at the end of the year being June 30th, that's New Year's Eve, it's announced by the NBA how much the players are getting back. And last year, the players only got half of that money back. Okay, so if you were a $10 million player, you only got 9.5. Well, the league just gave an updated projection that it's going to be 1% back. So if you're a $10 million player, you're only getting, and I say only, for the average person, 9.1 million should be enough, right? But We're in a business and we're talking about how this business functions, this industry. Agents are only getting commission on the money that their players get paid. So they're losing 9% of their money. So they should be pro some of these restrictions to better get the system in balance. If teams like the Warriors and the Clippers are overspending, and the Suns and the Wolves and the Bucks and the Lakers and the Celtics, you start going down the list, if they're just going to spend without care because they can, then it's coming out of the paycheck of all the other players. And we're in a weird year with like RSNs, regional networks died, and we have a new TV deal that should fix some of this. And for someone like LeBron who plays for 20-something years, it'll average out. But for the player who only plays like 3 or 4 or 5 years, and if you only get 90% of your money or 95 over that course of the time, that's not great. So, and the other aspect, the other side is if the players didn't get enough, then the teams have to cut money and send it to the PA. And by the way, the agents don't get a commission on that overage or that extra money, the underpayment, the extra that the players get. You're not going to get a commission. So for the agent, there's no benefit in either side. Like you want that split to be as close to perfection as possible if you want to get as close to your full commission. So these are just like little aspects that I don't think people understand. That's the most important thing that you need to fight for with these restrictive rules. They have to be restrictive because Steve Ballmer, he has enough money that he could probably buy almost any team, all the teams. He's just the whole thing. He laps all these folks, right? And I have no problem with wealth and his life, and he, the arena's beautiful. Like they've rebuilt courts all through Los Angeles with the Clippers logo. They've done great things. This is not a criticism of the person, but if money doesn't matter and you could just build your roster and trade for Norm Powell with basically nothing and trade for James Harden and keep aggregating money in trade, well, the league is like, okay, this is circumventing the intent of the rules, but more importantly, it's throwing the balance out of whack.
Yeah.
And it's costing everybody money. And that's really the issue that I think is the importance. So when we say squeezing the middle class, I don't think we're really squeezing the middle class. What we're trying to do, if anything, that the highest paid players are the ones who squeeze the most. How much would LeBron? Well, LeBron is prime, but let's say Wemby healthy, or Ant, or name any star, they go to free agency, they might get, like, if there was a limit like the cap, they would probably get 90% of the cap and everyone else would get the minimum in a free market economy. So really, like, it's the top players who are getting squeezed more than the middle class, and the bottom class, quote, might be two-way players at this point. And they're getting greater opportunity than they've ever gotten before, because the other alternative was go play overseas or play in the D League before it was the G League for almost no money. So again, I'm painting a picture here that someone might say, oh, like, oh, everything's great. No, like, there are flaws. We talked about that mid-level. Maybe
always will be.
It hurts. Maybe it hurts the middle class, quote, because there's the mid-level starts to dry up. But I think in general, the direction of the NBA, teams are selling at the highest dollar that the Celtics are selling for $1 zillion, whatever. TV ratings, don't tell me what TV ratings are. They just got like a 2.5, 3 time deal.
Yeah.
So why do I care what the ratings? I mean, does that matter for the next deal in like another decade or however long the deal is? Like, okay, yeah, like, there's always things to worry about, and we can compare football and basketball and baseball and all these other sports and say better this, worse that. The league is relatively healthy. Relatively, the All-Star game still sucks, but like, so what? Like, I'm not a doom and gloomer, but I don't think the middle class is getting squeezed. I think that teams have to make difficult decisions, and I don't think there's anything wrong with forcing teams to make difficult decisions. I think that's actually the joy of it. It's like playing defense. Like, you're taking away what the team's trying to do offensively. The league is playing defense for balance sake. Otherwise, the players get screwed anyway and lose 10% of their money.
Yeah, and that's, if anybody's wondering, when Eric was talking about that money that gets held for that balancing purposes, that is the single motivating driver for why we had the bubble in 2020, because nobody wanted things to just end, money to be lost, and all that. Everyone, players included, because we're still getting 5 years later, people like, why did the players ever agree to have to, stay in Disney World hotels for months on end? Because they wanted to get paid. And again, yeah, LeBron, fine. LeBron could have stayed at home, put his feet up, and been like, we'll get back to it when the world opens back up. But they're thinking about the guys, like you said, the guys who may only have a 3-year career, the guy who might have been on a minimum deal for the first 2 seasons and hadn't made a lot of money. Those are the guys who get hit a little bit harder than the true superstars who, quite frankly, with the amount of money they all make, they would not have probably felt that if they've managed their money okay. So that's one of the ones. So I want to move on to the next one here, because I know Trevor and I have thoughts on this. If they came to you and said, Eric, you could change one thing in the CBA, and let's not get too nitty gritty, like super detailed, but like one thing ideally that would impact transactions or something like that. And we're going to change it for the next league year. So we're going to let everybody know we're changing this. What's the one thing you would change?
That's a good question. I'd have to think on that.
Okay. While you think about it, I can give you mine, because mine's, I like the trade restrictions, but I'd like to see it be the 100% matching, trigger a second apron hard cap versus the first apron, just to free it up a little bit more and make life a little easier with that. But that's just, I like the idea that it triggers a restriction. I think going to the first apron was a little rougher on some teams than they maybe wanted it to be. So that's mine.
Well, I think you can argue that if the system is setting the second apron as what they view as their upper bound, so you have a lower bound and upper bound. They want teams to spend what's called the floor, 90% of the cap. That's the least we want you to spend. If we're saying that the second apron is the most that we want you to spend, then your argument holds, because why should there be restrictions? Because you're not getting over the second apron by doing these moves. So I could get on board with that. I've got one that is absolutely dumb, and you'll recognize this.
Love it.
And you kind of touched on it even earlier in the show. Like, I have to teach that it's the non-taxpayer mid-level that taxpaying teams have. Can we rename them the non-apron mid-level exception and then the non-second apron mid-level exception?
Yes.
That's it. You don't have to call it the non-first apron, just non-apron. Any team with an apron doesn't have the mid-level exception, those bigger ones, right? You have the mid-level. you have the taxpayer. No, let's call it the. It's trying to teach it to people and explain, because like you all are you've been doing this for a very long time, and your fans who are watching the show probably are more into the nitty gritty of what's going on in the league than maybe a more casual fan. But those who are more casual fans, they don't know any of this stuff. And I have a lot of people come to me who want to be agents or learning, and they don't know. Even players who are formerly in the league don't know some of this stuff. Hell, some GMs barely know this stuff, to be honest. And trying to teach how it works, and then like these oxymorons, it's just like jumbo shrimp type stuff. It's like, stop. Yep. So I think they kind of fixed the extension thing from going from 120 to 140. It's still like, I could argue like, just let them extend to the full amount. Still have the extend and trade rule, because like I feel like that should be the bottleneck. Sure. Like, fine, if you trade for someone, there's a limit to what you can extend them for a period of time. I get the logic of that, but it's sort of the Gordon Hayward rule, which is what the issue was, where the Jazz had Gordon Hayward, would have paid him the max. He would have taken the max. The most they could have paid him at the time was 120. And we had the 2016 spike, so the number didn't make sense for him. Then he left for the Celtics and obviously got hurt, and things went the way they went. But they're willing to pay him, and he's willing to take the money. And I feel like that is an artificial hurdle that they addressed. I think the reason they went to 140 instead of 120 are fears that it's a loophole where teams find a way to just spend more money. And so, yeah, that's what the bottleneck is for. But then the guy will just go to free agency and get that same number. And then the counter to that is, well, DeJounte Murray didn't, right? So, yes, there will be some edge cases where guys are like, I'll just take the money. I mean, even Brandon Ingram took an extension that was within the extend and trade rules. Mm-hmm. So instead of going to free agency and signing a contract that could have been more, he was willing to do it for a little bit less because of the flexibility and just for committing to money. And that's the money is so big and so high right now that it's really hard to turn away these extensions. So but really, like, the pet peeve side of things, I probably have like a list of like 10, 15 things that are just like a little, and like even just how the CBA is written, where what is it like? I was looking at the DeJounte Murray trade kicker before it happened. I was like, okay, what if the Hawks trade him? He has an extension, and the kicker is in the extension, but the kicker isn't, the trade bonus isn't in the original part. So what's the rule? And if you look at the CBA in the top first like 100 pages, it's like he's not going to get that bonus, is what the first 100 pages or so say. And then somewhere around like 400, it's like, unless this is in there. And it's like, well, can't we put that on the same page in the same paragraph? Because I have people like sending me, or even like, can a team pad a trade by 250,000? It basically says, yes, you can. And then 2 paragraphs later, it says, unless you're over the aprons. But like, I have people sending me screenshots trying to yell at me that I'm wrong. And I'm like, just look 2 paragraphs down. So there's a little bit of like, nerdy stuff that I would do. But I think the naming of the oxymoron stuff is it dumb? Yes. Is it change the system? No. But it makes life a little easier for me. So cheers.
I'll tell a quick story on that non-taxpayer. I was working with someone who had worked in the league for years and was moving over to the agent side, and was like, I'm going to be on the agent side. And you're absolutely right. Even though they'd been in the league for years, a lot of this stuff they didn't really know because they didn't deal with it. They were more, let me go find you the player. You deal with the other part of it. And we're going through it, and he's making notes. And then we're doing kind of our like pre-quizzing and all that stuff. And he stops me and he goes, is the non-taxpayer MLE kind of have a dumb name? He's like, because you can be in the tax. And I was like, yes, it does. Yes, it does. I was like, now forget that, because that's going to trip you up later. Like, just remember what the actual rules are around it. And he was like, okay. He goes, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. And I was like, like, let's put that out of your mind. And, I just
teach it as non-apron and non-second apron. Yeah. I tell my students, this is what it's called. This is what we're going to refer to it as. You just have to remember what they are.
It makes more sense.
It's just like, let's call something what it is, not what it specifically isn't.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It's craziness.
All right. Trevor, you got any CBA questions, or do you want to jump?
No, let's move on to the sports business classroom stuff here.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
All right, so sports business classroom. As many of you, if you're longtime listeners, you know Trevor and I will talk about it.
Mhm.
It's a great opportunity for people who want to learn more about really how the business of the NBA works, not just cap, CBA. Eric's going to cover other things you can do within the program to do that. So, Eric, let's start with kind of the broad, high level. What is SBC?
Well, around 2016, Warren Legary and Albert Hall, who created Summer League in Las Vegas, they have this opportunity where they have all of the NBA functionally in Vegas at the same time, and they have the facility because they have the Thomas and Mack Arena, they have all the everything on UNLV in that area. So they were like, let's use this in two ways. Both selfishly and unselfishly. And I don't mean that as a negative, the selfish part, but let's give others an opportunity to learn and find their way into what is, functionally their dream job. The selfish part, and I mean that in a positive way, is that Warren has represented front office coaches and GMs and whatnot for a very long time. And they're always looking for talent, and it's hard to parse through, a zillion applicants and get good vetted quality people. And so it's just served two purposes. One is it can help connect teams to better prospects in terms of staffing, whether it be salary cap, whether it be scouting video analytics. And we've also expanded to be media and broadcast, and we're expanding further. I'll get to that in just a minute. And so it just serves a feedback loop, a double purpose. And so we're helping people get to their opportunities. So like Makar Gavorkian came in through the pandemic era. He's now running the cap for the Brooklyn Nets. And we've had GMs of G League teams who have actually, Amber Nichols is now part of the Washington Wizards staff. She's moved up from the G League team, but she was the GM of that, one of the few women GMs in the league as well. And there's just so many, long list of students who have gotten opportunity. And it's not just with teams. It might be with scouting companies. It might be with shoe companies. It might be with the networks. Like the @NBA on Twitter has been run by one of our former students. So it's one of those joyous things that I get out of it, is that we get to see success. I've been fortunate. I get to do what I love to do for a long period of time. Support my family, and I basically wake up and obsess over. Okay, I've got to make up for Bleacher a fake trade. What did I do? I just did, was it RJ Barrett to the Wizards for Marcus Smart. I'm thinking, how do we fix the Raptors and get them under the tax and give them a flippable contract like Bruce Brown? That's my job, to figure stuff like that out. That's what I obsess over. So while at times, schedule might be a lot. I went to 3 games in a row the other day. What am I complaining? Oh no, I got to go to another game. So the goal is to try to help people find a way into that sort of joy of doing what you love to do, because you have to work hard. I work hard as anyone you're going to meet, but I'm doing it in something I love to do. And so it makes the grinding more rewarding. It makes it easier to stay up late, have a difficult schedule, fly, I got to fly to the draft lottery and the combine, and I have a late flight or an early flight, or these are really wonderful problems to have. So I've been blessed, and our goal is to sort of pass that on. As far as what we actually teach, I mentioned salary cap, and Keith is going to be helping us teach. Yossi Goslin, formerly of Hoops Hype, of course, Bobby Marks is our lead instructor, and myself, teaching you the salary cap. I don't think you're going to get much better than that. I mean, maybe it exists, but I would be hard pressed to find a better way to learn that sort of stuff. And we're not like a 1,000 people in a room where you're in an auditorium and you listen to people tell you how 20 years ago they got into the industry, and at the end of it you get a certificate. It's a hands-on, immersive experience where we've got a mock trade deadline. You're assigned a team the very first day, and you're in a group with people negotiating and trying to fix your team and make trades. And we have a mock deadline, and we have a final presentation. We have midterms where we beat the crap out of you to make sure you're doing what we want you to do as far as thinking critically and not just going with low-hanging fruit and on the surface level. And then we have scouting video analytics. That kind of goes, Keith, what you're saying about this player or person coming from over the team side. There's the how and the why. I like to think that the salary cap is the how. How do we do this? But the why is the scouting video and analytics, which is player evaluation and strategy in terms of how are you going to attack offensively? How are you going to attack defensively? How do you better watch basketball as a fan and transition from just following the ball, which is when you first start watching basketball, you're a little kid or even some grown-ups, some people watching for a long time never get past this, but they're just watching who has the ball. But if you have 10 players on the court and one has the ball, 9 players are doing things for a reason. What are they doing? And so that's what scouting video analytics. Video obviously is more, preparing, slicing up material. It's a part of the coaching arm. Analytics is more of the numbers of strategy. And then we have media broadcast, which is obviously, Trevor, closer to what you're doing, and Keith as well. You're part of the media and myself. But in terms of getting up, starting a podcast, a lot of our students, that's usually the easiest starting point because it's relatively free. It's not free, but it's relatively free. And there is as much opportunity as you want. It's obviously hard to grab an audience, and you guys have done a great job in finding an audience. But we can help people get started in that front. And then folks who want to be on TV or radio or whatever. What we're adding, and I think they're making the announcement today, so scoop if spoiler, but we're adding a new major, athlete representation, which is really functionally an agent major. It's not what we're calling it. It's either for folks who want to be agents, who need to pass the certification exam, existing agents who want to better understand anything from salary cap to NIL to just athlete management in general, what goes into it. So we'll have practicing agents help run that. We'll have practicing agents come and be speakers. And you'll still study probably salary cap. That's usually where we recommend. So it's like a minor in salary cap. If you've already passed the exam, you could do scouting video analytics. You could technically do media and broadcast. But really, you'll get extra time, extra sessions. And instead of representing a team, you're going to represent players. And we did this last year on the fly. Like it just sort of happened organically because we had about 25 agents take the program. And so we carved them out, put them in charge of players. And one of our students negotiated a deal for Jalen Suggs that was really lucrative. And then in real life, he got pretty darn close to that. So, but it's a wonderful program. You can go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com to register. It's July 13th through 19th. It's in Las Vegas, and we put you up, so you don't have to worry about the hotel. That's within the price. We're feeding you. You have to get there. That's on you. And I'm happy to answer questions either via Twitter or /X at Eric Pincus, ERICPINCUS, or just reach out to me or reach out to Keith because he's fan of part of the program for many years. He's contributed and will be a part of it this year as well. So he can definitely point you in the right direction. But ask questions. If you're watching the show, it's because you're a little bit more serious. I would imagine, at least the bulk of your audience is a little more serious about learning what is happening in the NBA than just turning on Sports Center or whatever and just seeing like someone yell, not in Sports Center, but some of the other folks just yell about
first
players. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I'm not a big yeller. I don't think it does any. I try to see both sides. I do take an opinion. I do have a point of view, but I try to at least incorporate in my point of view an understanding of like the full issue instead of just trying to argue something inanely. So trying to turn off fan brain, trying to teach you to critically think. These are all principles that we're working on. And you get to learn from like incredible folks, Jay Adonde, Hall of Fame journalist, Howard Beck, Katie Heindel, CP the Franchise, Seth Partnow, Steve Jones. I don't know who's been announced, and if I'm announcing people who haven't been announced yet, ignore that. I didn't. Anyone who hasn't been announced by, I'm technically the general manager of the program, but I'm still beholden to the thing. So I'm not supposed to announce people that I'm not supposed to announce. So forgive me to my staff if I've said things I shouldn't have. So just edit that out now. All good. Don't have to worry about that. So.
I will add to what Eric has said. It is this is important for anybody who's super interested in doing this to know you're not guaranteed a job, because it still comes down to you getting a job and working and doing all that. Same thing going to college, just passing your classes doesn't guarantee you a job when you graduate, right? It's you got to put in the work. But just go to the Sports Business Classroom website, and there is a testimonial section and an alumni section, and it's pretty impressive. And it's names you'll recognize. And if you don't even recognize some of the people's names, you're going to recognize where they work, because it's a lot of NBA teams, it's agencies, it's media companies, it's all of it. And what's really cool, I think, is now too, for a long, long time, right? For the coolest part, I think, for the three of us here, when we were trying to figure out, like, man, I'd love to work in sports someday and in the NBA, there was nothing like this. It was maybe I can land an internship and work my way in that way, or maybe my uncle knows a guy who works for a team somehow and that gets you in the door and that's how you can get there. Or quite frankly, you were a former player or something like that. So that's the coolest part here, is this is a, removing the barriers of having to know someone. As long as you're willing to come in, work really hard, and do this, it's going to give you the avenue and the tools to meeting people, connecting, doing the things you need to do, growing your skills. The other part that I think is really cool too, and I'm so excited for what you said about the athlete representation part. There is now a whole new world within college basketball that's going to be, and already is, but even more as we go along, is going to encompass some of the NBA level things that have been existing in the NBA for years. I was just talking to someone who is a college general manager, if you will. It's not exactly their title, but it's essentially the role they're playing. And they're like, yeah, we don't have a salary cap, but we have an NIL budget. And that's like my salary cap that I'm going to have to work within as we go out there. You know, so I can't go out and offer 15 kids in the transfer portal spots with our team, because they're all want some NIL money, and I don't necessarily have money for all 15 of them. Said, but I might be able to get 3 of them, and then it's which 3, and that's where the scouting and analytics part can come in. And this is all tying in together, which just is, if you're kind of in the world of, I'm not really going to be a coach and I'm not a player, and I really want to do more front office stuff, it's no longer just a world of professional basketball in the NBA and overseas in the G League and other things. You now have avenues open through college, which is going to be great. And I know, I mean, I'm predicting here, obviously, but I know we're going to see all sorts of names popping up that have come through SBC over the next several years that land jobs within college programs doing things that encompass the skills that they learned at SBC.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. It's sort of what the cliche is, that's the Wild West, where the rules aren't fully set yet, and with that, chaos is a opportunity. Chaos is a ladder.
Yeah.
And, Wes Wilcox taught at our program for 2 years, in between his Atlanta Sacramento situation. So, but he's leaving for Utah to be, I guess, or if he hasn't left yet, like the general manager or whatever the title is there. So
that's the University of Utah, for anybody who was wondering, not the Utah Jazz.
Oh yeah, he's going to the college level.
Yeah, going into college. Yep.
And it's it's both scary and sort of new, but there's opportunity. And so, and really on the agent side, the shift over the last however many years is like, you're now a basketball agent more than an NBA agent.
Yeah.
There was always like FIBA, FIBA, like, will you represent overseas, or you partner with someone overseas? Because not every player plays in the NBA. Most players play, they dip back and forth. The fringe guys are just, you're weighing staying in college for NIL money, going overseas, getting a two-way, can you get drafted, all of these questions. And then also, as they're coming out of high school and where they're going to go to college, and now it's, how do you help them make those decisions, and how do you get entrenched in their lives in a way that is productive and ethical, which is something that we value highly, because not taking advantage of players. Obviously, we want agents to earn fairly and earn their keep, but to have the best interests of their players and really at heart of what you're trying to do. So we're trying to help people be better at what they do, by understanding how to do it in a ethical, legal way, and really understand like what it is that a lot of it is just not like, like I said, there's folks on stations who yell about the NBA who just don't know what they're talking about, and it's just haven't done the work. And I don't mind if you've done the work and then yell because you have a strong opinion. That's fine. Like you could have a very strong opinion and say things suck or things are great or you're an idiot or I'm an idiot. Everyone's an idiot. I don't know. Whatever they're yelling about. I'm not a yeller, but at least do the work so you know what the hell you're talking about. And that's really what we strive to do. And it's really the most fun I have all year. And it's work. You're showing up. We're like getting started at 8 a.m. We're going late. There's events, there's parties, there's all kinds of things late. But like it's just you don't sleep a lot. I don't sleep the whole week. Basically, I get like 3 hours of sleep a night. But and then I sleep it off like the rest of July and into August. But it is wonderful, and we put a lot of love into it. It's not, and I communicate and work with students, former students, literally daily. Some of them do projects for me. Some, we argue basketball. I have a private Discord, and we argue basketball. Right now, we're arguing, the Thunder and what did the loss to the Lakers mean? Is that they're throwing up their record against like the best teams in the West? It's not great, but then how many games did they have Chet, and how many games did they have Hartenstein? And without context, you're like, oh, the Thunder may not be as good as you think. And then with context, you're like, actually, they're probably better than you think. So these are the kind of things that we want to argue year round. And I take it very seriously. The students, I value their opinions, and I'd love to, if you're interested, check it out, reach out. It's a fun program, and it's really an investment in yourself and in what you hope to do as a career. It's not a fantasy camp. We turn away people with cover letters who are just like, I don't really want to work in basketball, but I just really want to be around it and see what it's like. It's like, well, yeah, we'll put you on the wait list and see if at the end there's a spot, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people who are serious about what they're going into this industry.
I can tell anybody who's listening, I can tell you with all certainty, Eric means it when he says he keeps in touch with the students. I've been at multiple non-SBC events with him, and it's like rare that it's not 10, 20, 30 kids coming up to him just to connect and hang out and, chat and things, to the point where when we've done the Arizona State, I don't know how many times you've used the line, I want to connect with you, but after we're done doing the work part here, let's connect, at lunch or whatever it may be. So it's, he means absolutely what he says when he invests in the people. Everybody who does the program invests back in everybody. So Eric, again, where can people find more information? What are the dates? But hit him with that one more time.
Well, it's July 13th through 19th, so it's really just through the heart of Summer League in Las Vegas. Thomas and Mack, you have to get there. We'll put you up at the hotel. You can go to sportsbusinessclassroom.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Eric Pincus, EricPincus. Hit me with a DM. Reach out to Keith. He knows the program. Ask questions because, why not? It's better going through your whole life and saying, I should have tried this, or what if I tried that? Try it, experience it, learn about it. For some people, it happens very quickly. And for some people, they're like, okay, I've learned enough to know this isn't for me. I don't want to start at, maybe as an intern with an NBA team. I want to, but there's so many opportunities also that you may not have thought of. And so let us help open your mind to what working in basketball means. If your goal is I want to be the GM of my favorite team, sure. But there's one person who does that, and that could be you. But let's teach you, okay, number one, what are other opportunities? And then two, if you do want that, and that's your exclusive goal, well, let's at least walk you through what you would need to do, what the steps are, because you probably won't start in that position. You probably won't start as the GM of, I was going to kill a few teams, but the GM of the Celtics will be nice. Well, you're not going to start as the GM of the Celtics. It's a wonderful program. Reach out and ask questions. At the worst, that's free. And I'm happy to have a conversation. I talk to students all the time and just sort of let them know about it. And if it's right for them, great. And if it's not, so be it. But ask some questions. And I'm happy to have that talk. And I appreciate y'all having me on to discuss it, talk a little bit of hoops.
Yeah,
always
thanks so
always
much
enjoy
for
having you on, Eric. Always enjoy it. Always a great time. I will put the link to Sports Business Classroom in the description down below if you're on YouTube or over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll throw the link in there as well. But again, Eric, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course.
Yeah,
Anytime.
thanks for hanging out.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody, make sure you do subscribe to the Front Office Show on YouTube as well as the podcast side. Again, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.